Hi all and welcome to this run through of question 3 on language paper 1, commonly referred to as the structure question. This question does bear some quite close revision in terms of it's actually asking us to do something that is slightly different to what we were expecting, and it's a slightly different response in terms of how the question looks when it is completed. We've been used to looking at and analysing language, looking at terminology and looking at the effective keywords for a long time. The whole PEE structure that we've done since Key Stage 3 uses that. However, in this response, we're actually looking for a slightly different style of response. So it does bear watching and revisiting these questions just to make sure that we fully understand the expectations of what we are going to be doing. So first of all, we'll have a look at the question, have a look at the response, and then we'll have a look at how we would go about responding to this. Okay, so the response we're going to be looking at is question 3. So here we have, you now need to think of the whole of the source. This text is from the beginning of a novel. How has the writer structured this text to interest you as a reader? You could write about what the writer focuses your attention on at the beginning of the source, how and why the writer changes this focus as the source develops, and any other structural features that interest you. It's worth 8 marks, so therefore we are spending about 10 minutes on this question, and we're looking at writing at least 2 well-developed paragraphs. Whenever you see that word could in the response, what it actually means is that you should be doing this. So within each paragraph, what we're expecting to see is something from the beginning, something as the source develops, and something towards the end, and any other structural devices that interest you. Now, a strategy that I've used quite effectively with this is to look at the idea of tip-top. Which looks at things that could potentially change within the extract, these structural features that a writer has used to interest you and to engage you as a reader, and you can see how clearly these change over time. Now, what these things are time, place, topic, or person. So within the extract, is there a shift in time? Does it have a flash forwards or a flash backwards? Does it talk about, does it remain static? Does it remain linear? Or does it go backwards to a flashback? Or does it move forward? Is there a jump within the extract? Quite often there will be. Is there a shift in place? Most extracts won't stay static. They will move around. They will go from one area to another, and they will develop in that way. Similarly, in terms of topic, there will be different focuses within the extract. It might be that at the start of the extract, for example, we're talking about a room, and then the extract might talk about a person, and then it might talk about an event. It might shift in topic so that the focus of what the extract is talking about will change. Or does it introduce new characters? Does it focus on one character at the start, or does it change and develop as it goes? Now, with this response, we're looking at the Silk Road extract, the Stranger Child. So what I've done is I've been through and I've picked, because this is quite a useful extract for this, 3 examples from across the extract about how these things change. There is slight shifts in time. It's not the most obvious shift, but we have a flashback in terms of Rosie remembering things from the start, from the evening before. We have the middle, where we have it in the present, and then we have hints of a flash backwards about the Stranger Child, whether it's a ghost or whether it's something that's out of time, if you like. It's a character who is a Victorian child almost in this modern setting. So at the beginning of the extract, we have the long drive from London the evening before. In the middle of the extract, we have the wintry sun hanging low in the sky. And then at the end of the extract, when the girl is introduced, we have the ankle-length dress and pinafore and washed-out greys. So we can see how time is shifting across the extract, and that is a structural device that the writer has chosen to use. Similarly, we have place, we have shifts in place. At the beginning of the extract, we have Rosie in the kitchen, standing at the sink, her hands deep in suds. As the extract develops, we have a focus on the garden, and those of you that have already watched the response on question 2, we'll be able to recognise the idea of the description of an overgrown mess, the muddle of trees, etc., the knuckles of the tree. This messy garden is the focus of the extract, and then it moves back to the house as Rosie gets ready to rush back out into the garden, where she dries her hands hurriedly. And again, we see the shift. We go from kitchen to garden, back to kitchen, back to garden. There's a shift across place across the extract. Topic. At the start of the extract, the focus is very much on Rosie. You've got Rosie overwhelmed by the tasks that lay ahead of her. In the middle of the extract, we have the garden being considered with long twisted shadows across the undergrowth. And then as the extract concludes, we have the focus on the stranger child with pale and drawn with anxiety, or any of the other extracts. We could use any of the quotations, sorry. You could use ankle-length dress, pinafore with washed out greys, etc., etc. Likewise, the change in person, we have that Rosie is the first character that we're introduced, where Rosie saw the stranger child, but then we also have her children focused on in the middle of the extract, where Sam was kneeling beside a patch of earth. We have the son digging for worms, etc., etc. And then the change into the girl with her hair hung down the back in a matted, dusty-looking plait. Now, I've deliberately chosen different quotations for these, but lots of these quotations could be used for different ideas. So, for example, you could use these two quotations interchangeably. You could use the quotations about Rosie interchangeably. What we're looking for is ideally 2 paragraphs looking at the changes that take place and including 3 quotations within that paragraph, because you're talking about the beginning, you talk about the middle, and you talk about the end. So we've got time shifts, place shifts, topic, and person. What we're going to do today, we're going to have a look at a paragraph, how I've gone about doing this. So apologies, because this is handwritten. It was one we did as a class, but we can see that in this one we are looking at the change in topic. Within the extract, the writer shifts topic rapidly to show how the situation changes from ordinary to supernatural. This is what is happening. There are shifts in topic, and this is why it's happening. It's going from the mundane to the extraordinary, the ordinary to the supernatural. At the start of the extract, the descriptions are very ordinary, such as Rosie's feeling as she felt overwhelmed by the tasks. Again, like with question 2, we can see that we've embedded this. Rather than saying, for example, we've tried to succinctly include this within the sentence. As the extract develops, the descriptions become more unusual. For example, the garden giving off long twisted shadows across the undergrowth. And then finally, the extract becomes totally supernatural by describing the girl as ghostly, pale, and drawn with anxiety. The writer has done this to slowly develop how unusual, creepy, and supernatural the story is. Now, what we're seeing here is an introduction about what is happening, the shift in topic. We have a point about the start, including a quotation, what happens in the middle, and as the extract develops, and finally what the extract does at the end, and then why this has happened, just reflecting back to the start about what you have identified. What you'll notice is, once you've included the quotation, it is not necessary to talk about the particular device that has been used. So the fact that she felt overwhelmed by the task, we could talk about the use of the third person voice. We could talk about the use of the word overwhelmed and what that signifies, but it's not necessary, because that's not what this question is asking us. Again, we could talk about the twisted shadows, and in question 2, we could explore that language, but we don't need to, because that is not what the question is asking us to do. So if we go back to our question, and we're able to see how this is, how we've responded to this, we can see how we've talked about what the writer focuses our attention on at the beginning of the source. We've talked about how this changes as the source develops, and we've talked about how these structural features interest us by saying that it's going from ordinary to supernatural. We've used this one in terms of topic, and the reason I picked that for the one we did in class is actually there are other ones that are easier to do. Personally, if I was looking at this question, I would be referring to place, because it does change quite rapidly, and also the people within the extract, I think, is quite a useful one to look at. This extract is lovely in the sense that all 4 of these things change across the extract. It might well be that you get an extract where 2 of these really leap out at you as significant and important, so therefore, of course, go for those, because they're the ones that are more useful and more important for you. Okay. Like I say, question 3 is quite tricky. I would argue that question 3 is the trickiest question on the paper, purely because it's so unusual in terms of the expectations of us as students. It's not asking you to analyse language, it's asking you to think about the structure of the source. So as you are reading this, potentially drawing out a very quick, rough tip-top grid might be a really useful strategy to do this. Even if it's just bullet points in beginning, middle, end, and what changes, might help to plan out your ideas so that you are prepared and ready to go. Hopefully that's been really useful. If you'd like to have a look at the whole source, I'm going to add a link to that in the description for this video as well. Next time we're going to have a look at question 4, which is a development question looking at both the idea of a statement and the analysis of language. So until then, thank you very much.